All right, here we are back again with another one of these videos that I've been having fun with. I didn't intend on it being an every week video, but it's been fun. If you haven't seen one of these already, what I do is I use the ESPN Playoff Machine, which you can use yourself. Just Google ESPN Playoff Machine, it'll come up. I pick every single game how I think it's gonna go, and then it'll tell me based on those projections who will make the playoffs, what will the seeds be, all of that stuff. It's pretty fascinating stuff. So yeah, let's just get into it. So real quick right here, just showing you all of the games that I picked and who I picked. So the one that's lighter, that's the team that I picked. You don't have to go through every single one. Just in case you're curious as to why a certain team ended up with a certain record, you can go back to this spot and look for yourself and see why that happened. So all right, in the AFC, the New England Patriots remain at the top at 13-4. I have them tied with Kansas City for that 1 seed, but they have the tiebreaker given the way this all breaks down, meaning that the New England Patriots would get the bye. The evil empire is absolutely back for the playoff matchups. So the division winners, one surprise in the division winners for sure, and one, I think, notable team that is no longer here projected to make the postseason. We'll talk about that. Kansas City, not really a surprise. Tennessee, not really a surprise. Cincinnati, I now have winning the division. And a big part of it is, you see there's no Baltimore here. We'll talk about that in a second. It's mostly just because of injuries. But yeah, we'll get into that when we get into the rest of the teams, the ones that didn't make it. We have the Chargers here with the number 5 seed, although fascinatingly enough, they would have a better record than the Bengals, which does happen. A 5 seed does often have a better record than the 4 seed, kind of the weird way. Just, the divisional matchup stuff works out. Buffalo would get the 6th seed and play Tennessee. That would be a fun game. And also what would be a fun game would be the Colts playing the Chiefs, even though there's a pretty big win disparity there. I think the Colts are better than a 9-8 team, even though that is what I'm projecting their record to end up as. So here is the rest of the AFC. Let's start in the AFC East, so top left corner. We're going to go with, Patriots, as I mentioned. I have them winning their remaining 4 games. And for Buffalo, I have them actually winning every single game except for when they play Tampa Bay. So one notable fact is, if Buffalo beats New England the second time they play, then they would have a even record. Although, again, will Buffalo beat Tampa Bay? That can remain to be seen. And will Buffalo and New England win all their other games? That remains to be seen. But those are 2 very good teams, clearly. Also, the Miami Dolphins, I do have a little bit higher than I think I had in previous weeks. I have them with 8 wins. So they're absolutely a team that could potentially squeak in here and make the postseason. It's possible, because remember, the 7 seed I had is only 9-8 with the Colts. So it's absolutely possible the Dolphins could squeak in here. Now, they would have to beat either Tennessee or New England. I have them losing both of those games. I also have them beating the Saints now, where in previous weeks I hadn't. So we'll see if they can actually pull that off. But yeah, that's where I have them. And of course, the Jets suck. So we'll move on to the AFC West. Just keep going down the list. Chargers and Chiefs both making the playoffs. I think that checks out. That makes sense. Couple interesting teams, the Raiders and the Broncos. Those are still teams I could potentially see finding a way to get in. I have had the Raiders getting in previous weeks, but it was a tough loss losing to Washington. They do have a couple of games, though, that I have them losing that I could see them winning. Like, I have them losing to the Chiefs, the Browns, the Colts, and the Chargers, but I think they have a chance in all 4 of those games. So if you can instead go 2-2 in those games and then beat Denver, well, now you're a playoff team. So that's kind of where this system can be a little bit flawed. But again, it's more for entertainment than it is like the best way. And, same thing for Denver. Like, they're a team that they have a chance. They just need to maybe, pull off even just some slight upsets, not massive upsets, right? Beat the Raiders. That's one those 2 teams might end up being a big game. Then they have, they still play the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bengals, and then they have the Lions, which that's the one I have them winning. So if you can go 2-2 in those 4 that I have you losing and beating the Lions, well, that will get you in. At least maybe. So that's kind of where I have those 2 teams. Let's go up to the AFC North, top right corner of the screen. So you have Cincinnati as the playoff team. That doesn't seem too surprising. 10-7, sure. I do have them beating Baltimore. Let's talk about Baltimore for a second. We'll get back to Cleveland because Baltimore is a team I think people are going to be surprised for me not having as a playoff team all of a sudden. I mean, for one thing, I think there still is a really good chance they end up in the postseason, but it's just an injuries thing. I mean, losing Marlon Humphrey, I think, is a big blow to this football team. They play the Browns, the Packers, the Bengals, the Rams, and then they finish the season against Pittsburgh, who, okay, that's the easiest mark on the schedule, but still, they've beaten you already this season. So tough loss losing to the Steelers, and on top of this, they're banged up. So I only have them winning against the Steelers there. Although I acknowledge, like, okay, the game against the Browns, totally within reach. Game against Cincinnati, totally within reach. But I think the Rams and the Packers, because of the way Baltimore is just banged up, I think they become the more favored teams in this one. And then, okay, maybe you beat the Browns, maybe you beat the Bengals. That's still going to be tough. So they're going to have to, I think, pull off, in my mind, a couple of upsets to get into the postseason. But I also think they can do it, and, they're totally within reach. I mean, currently, they're tied for the playoff spot. So win one of those games, you're in. Just a fascinating situation. You beat Cincinnati, you win your division, according to this projection. And the flip side for the Browns, I think people might be saying this is a bit optimistic for Cleveland because, again, they have some tough games on their schedule as well. But, I don't know. I kind of like where the Browns are at a little bit. Like, I think that they could beat the Ravens. I don't think that that's crazy to say. They, lost by one score against Baltimore, but that was one Baltimore covered really well, largely on the strength of Marlon Humphrey. So that getting, him being out for the season, that changes some stuff. I think that, for Cleveland, I still would have them beating Pittsburgh, and I have them beating the Las Vegas Raiders. So there's 3 wins, and if you can pull off an upset against the Packers or the Bengals, well, then you're in. So I think that they're another team that has a very legitimate chance to make the postseason. Pittsburgh, I still have losing every game, but they'll probably win half of them because they're Pittsburgh and they just confuse me. Despite the fact that I keep thinking they suck, they keep winning football games, so maybe I'm just wrong about them. I don't know. AFC South, you then have the Titans, who, again, easy schedule, so even though they're also very banged up, they should still walk into the postseason. I have the Indianapolis Colts as that third and final wild card team. So there you go. And then Jacksonville and Houston both suck. All right, NFC, you have the Arizona Cardinals here. I still have them winning out. I think that they should be favored for every game. Although, again, it's not quite so simple as you expect them to. Just because I expect them to win each game in a vacuum doesn't mean they will win each game. And if they slip up once, Green Bay does have the tiebreaker, who I also have just going, I have them going 14-3, just one game back. The 3 seed here, Tampa Bay, they're in a fascinating situation because if they can just beat Buffalo, which is a big if, I think Buffalo is still good despite their record. If they can beat Buffalo, then that could put them, in a track to potentially get that first seed as well. And then Dallas here at 12-5, still a very good record. Fascinatingly, with the 5 and the 6 seed, I have the 49ers not winning the division, but getting that second wild card spot, or first wild card spot, because obviously Arizona won the division, and then San Francisco would finish second in the division, the Rams third, all making the playoffs still. Largely because I think in the past I had the Rams beating the 49ers the remaining time they play, but thinking about it, I'm like, well, the 49ers beat them the first time. Why wouldn't they beat them this time? To kill them the first time. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's why I have those two teams where they are. And the 7th seed, I have Philadelphia squeaking in, which is fun, although we can't talk about that a little bit. Let's get over to the panel where it shows every single team now, because Dallas at 12-5, okay, that checks out. But the Philadelphia versus Washington thing is a little bit interesting. I have currently the Eagles winning both games against Washington, but I don't know if that'll exactly happen. I have the Eagles as slight favorites, and you could totally make the argument for Washington winning one or both of those games. And if they did, then obviously they would be the team with the 9 wins, getting that 7th seed, because currently, I have just, there's no tiebreakers here. 9 and 8 is getting the Eagles in outright, according to how I projected this. So that's fascinating. So, again, that's why really what this exercise kind of does, in my opinion, more than actually tells you who's going to make the playoffs. It's just telling you who the contenders are and what the contenders have to do to get into the postseason. The NFC West, 3 teams make it, and even Seattle I have going 7-10. So, they're not out of it, although they're admittedly, it's going to be a little bit tough for Seattle to find a way in. The nice thing is they do have some winnable games on their schedule. The Texans, Bears, and Lions are all games I think they should win. But then you play the Rams and the Cardinals. So for them to get in, they realistically have to win out, and they would have to beat the Rams and the Cardinals. That feels like a bit too much for them to ask. too much to ask for them. Going to the AFC North here, so Green Bay Packers, talked about them. Minnesota, I have just going 8-9 here. You know, Chicago and Detroit, okay, yeah, neither of those teams are good. But Minnesota is a team that I've consistently felt like they are a playoff caliber, talented team, but they keep underperforming, and at a certain point you have to consider it coaching more than anything, because they already have currently 7 losses on their roster, and they play the Rams and the Packers. Now, they've beaten the Packers already this season, but the problem is they've also lost to the Lions. So you have to just find a way to, you know, pull off some of these wins that you're supposed to win. First off, you know, you got to at least get those 3. Then you got to beat either the Rams or the Packers just to get into the postseason. Maybe they've just dug themselves too much of a hole, in my opinion. And then for the NFC South, another fascinating thing to talk about here is it's New Orleans. I keep having them winning games, despite the fact that it seems like they're not this spectacular football team. They are 5-7, so that helps. They play the Jets coming up, and they play the Panthers and the Falcons. So that stuff also helps, where I do still have them as the better of those, you know, 3 NFC South teams that aren't Tampa Bay. So the interesting thing is I have the Saints losing to the Dolphins. If they can beat the Dolphins and, you know, they still lose to Tampa Bay, which even that they could win. They have been a thorn in Tampa Bay's side. There is still very much a real chance for New Orleans to squeak in here. And then, you know, I do not have Atlanta or Carolina winning, but even Atlanta, you know, get a couple upsets, in my opinion. They're a team that has a chance as well. So yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on all of this? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.